Hey, Dick, are you there?
I am.
Awesome. Well, I have a wonderful treat for everyone that's been listening to this channel for quite some time. I have a longtime friend of mine, Dick Larsen, who I met through this work. I want to say it was back probably like 97. I think it's been a long time. We're growing old. But Dick has known this information for quite a long time. He is a student of not only human nature, but also the Ageless Wisdom Teachings and the world's religions. And he also has a very interesting perspective that I want to share with everyone today. Because when I talked to him on the phone and I wanted to interview him, I wanted to see what we were going to talk about. He mentioned something that I thought was just, it blew my mind, to be honest with you. And it made me really excited, and I could not wait to talk to you and have everyone else hear this too. Now, throughout the course of these video series that I've been putting up these videos, I've talked about my personal experiences with Maitreya, where he looks different in every time. He can be elderly person. I saw him as a young boy in my elementary school one time. I've seen him in all different types of races and genders and so forth in different situations. And Dick Larsen here has a wonderful 5-step. we all want steps these days. You know, how do you spot whether you actually had a master experience or not? So that's why I'm bringing him on. I wanted to kind of share this, but real quick before we get into it, how long have you known about this information, Dick?
About 28 years, yeah. 1993, I saw my first lecture with Benjamin Creme here in Los Angeles, where I live, and that got me curious. I mean, about 80 to 90% of what he said just went right over my head. but the 10 or 12%, Gary, that made sense to me, I thought, I gotta check this out more. So I read his first book, Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom. Well, I grew up a Christian, and when I read that book, it was answering, it just made sense to me. It was just like real common sense. It didn't seem odd or weird or anything. And it answered some questions that my religion hadn't been able to answer. And I think that's a situation for a lot of religious people now. They're finding that their church, a lot of them, isn't solving their needs. And so they're looking elsewhere. And the Ageless Wisdom is a wonderful place to look. Alice Bailey wrote about 20 books, and then Benjamin Creme, I think, has something like 14 or 17 books on Amazon. We're not here to sell books, but in case people are curious.
Sure.
So yeah, I'd say about 28 years ago.
Yeah, and actually I have a link in the description so people can just go and check out the books if they want. I always recommend checking out the website, the Share International website, where you can get this information for free as well. But it's nice to be able to sit down on the couch and read a book from time to time and not just fiddle through your phone, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like, what's a book? I've never read a book in 3 years, right? Because it's all on the phone now, right? Now, I just kind of introduced this to you. So when we were talking on the phone last week,
right,
and you told me about some of your experiences, which I definitely, hopefully you'll be able to share some of your experiences with Maitreya, and also you had several experiences with another master that people are probably very familiar with, the master who was Jesus, the Master Jesus, right? So perhaps you want to share a couple of them before you get into the 5-step program? Sure.
I'll do it as I share, but I just want to tell your listeners, it's many listening right now may have had an experience of one of the Masters of Wisdom. They're the senior members of our spiritual kingdom. And, they're people that we knew as Krishna and Buddha and Jesus and Mary, and Joan of Arc is one of the great masters now, and Confucius. These people that went through evolution ahead of us and are senior members of the spiritual kingdom who behind the scenes are guiding humanity as best they can. We're kind of wild right now.
I know, right?
But that's who they are. And so they're a lot of them are great beings who people knew by certain names in certain lifetimes. And they may have had an experience of them. So I thought what we could do, Gary, is give them the 5 ways that I'm aware of that people can tell if they've seen a master or not.
Perfect.
Or at least likely, yeah. And where I got these from my experience of masters, but also from reading Share International Magazine, which is a wonderful monthly magazine that people can order about Maitreya and the masters and about good things that are happening in the world. And in every issue, people would write in letters when they thought they had an experience of a master. And as regular listeners to your show will know, Benjamin Creme was in contact with one of the masters 24 hours a day. And so he was taught how to do that. And so he could ask the master, was this a real experience this person had or not? And then if it was a real experience of a master, he would publish their letter in Share International Magazine and then say which master they experienced. And so it's always fascinating reading, you know. And it's wonderful that these masters would make themselves available to us in this way. Like you said, they've appeared like everybody you can imagine, young, old, every race, both sexes, whatever. And because they can appear any way they want to. They have their own bodies, but they can appear to us. They're the masters of energy, so they can just appear any way they want to. And then and it's up to us to know if it was them. So I thought it'd be fun to tell your listeners some ways they'll know they had an experience of a master.
Now, I do want to say this, too, before you say this.
Sure.
There were several times, not all the time, but several times that I asked Benjamin Creme, I was sure it was a master. and he said, no, it wasn't. It was just an ordinary person. So I wanted also people to know that it wasn't every time somebody came to Ben and asked him, was this a master? He always said yes. There were times, and a lot of times it was hard for me to hear sometimes when he told me no, because I was convinced it was. But as time went on, I started looking back on it, and I was like, yeah, that was right. That wasn't a master, you know. But in the time, so we had those too, and there were people that wrote in all the time, and he'd say, no, that wasn't a master. That was just an ordinary person or something like that. So anyway, but first of all, let me ask you this question before you say this. Before you when was your first experience with a master, and who was the master that you first had an experience with?
I've never been asked that question. I've done all these radio interviews on the internet. Nobody's asked me that question. I'm trying to think back. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't remember. Okay. I suspect it was the Master Jesus because I've had many Jesus experiences, and that was my religion, you know, when I was actively participating in a specific religion. I think over my life I've probably been about 50-50, but I want your listeners to know that this doesn't mean that Gary and I are special. The masters have been appearing to people at random. They usually appear to teach a lesson, but they can also appear to give people hope, because it's a pretty tough situation out there in the world right now. And so they will appear to, it's just that we're kind of on the lookout for them because we're so aware that they exist and that they're doing this. So we're more likely to recognize them. But they've been appearing to humanity across the board for probably 30 years now. So yeah, I know. It's fun, huh, Gary? And the experiences can be quite something, or they can be very common, very everyday. And that's one of the ways. The first way that you may know you had an experience with a master is that it's a very ordinary experience, but you can't get it out of your mind. It keeps coming back to you day after day, hour after hour, whatever. It's different for different people. But I had one, I was standing in a grocery store looking at books on the book rack in the grocery store, and about 15 feet to my left was a guy looking at magazines. He had kind of short brown beard and mustache, hair down to just over the top of his ears. He had just tan slacks and a real casual kind of tan pullover shirt and sandals. And I thought the sandals were kind of odd because it was raining. It was in the winter in Pasadena. where I was in this store, and I looked over at him, and then I thought, and I looked again, and I don't know why. I looked again, and I kind of observed him. Well, I couldn't get him out of my mind. I mean, eventually he went his way and I went my way, and we never talked, we never spoke, never made eye contact, but I couldn't get him out of my mind. Well, finally, knowing about Share International Magazine, I sent an email to Benjamin Creme at Share International Magazine and asked him if he would be so kind as to let me know if this person I saw in the grocery store was a master. And he published my letter and said that it was the Master Jesus. So it's one of those situations where it's very common experience, everyday experience, but it just sticks in your mind. And there's no reason that you should remember it, but you do. So that's one. Another one is there's something in the eyes that's really special. A lot of people have reported this. Either the eyes are real deep, or they're shiny or beautiful, or they're very touching. They touch you deeply, that kind of thing. And it's an eye experience. And people will write in, and then they'll be confirmed that was a master. I had an experience like this. I was driving home. I do a group meditation called transmission meditation, and I was driving home from this guy's house where we were meditating, a small group, about 6 people. And I stopped the sun was just setting. And I stopped at this red light, and I looked over at the side of the road, and there was a bus bench. And sitting on the bench was this filthy homeless man in a dirty trench coat with a kind of a long beard, grayish looking, and he just looked really down, and his head was down. And I looked over, and then all of a sudden he looked up at me. He didn't raise his head, he just raised his eyes. And he looked at me, and it happened very quickly. And my first thought, Gary, I don't know why, but I didn't even think about it. My first thought was, that guy is looking right through me. And then the light turned green, and I went on. Well, of course, I couldn't get it out of my mind. So I finally wrote to Benjamin Creme, and once again, it was the Master Jesus sitting there as a homeless person who literally did look right through me, I think. So that's another one, the eyes. There's something special about the eyes. A third way is that you see somebody, you notice them. For some reason, you notice them. Maybe they're crossing the street in front of your car at a red light or whatever, or maybe they're in a park and you notice them, or whatever. You see them, and then when you look back to see them again, they're gone, and there's no place they could have gone. You don't see anywhere they could have that quickly disappeared to. That was probably a master, because they will do that. They will appear. People have written in about this. They will appear, and then they will just disappear into thin air where they came from. So that's another master experience. That would be 3. Then the fourth one is that you will see somebody, or maybe talk to them or not, and you will all of a sudden feel this tremendous joy or love, tremendously happy. And there's no reason you should be that happy right then. Nothing has changed except you saw this person. So that happened to me. I was, once again, on my way to meditation. I left a college class in Los Angeles and was walking across the campus on this long sidewalk to the parking lot. And 2 boys were walking towards me. And at the last minute, I looked up, and there was this young lady walking behind them, and her face was kind of between their heads behind them. And I saw her, young student, college girl, shoulder-length brown hair, kind of a ordinary face, but she had this little kind of partial smile on her face, like a Mona Lisa smile, I always think of. And, all of a sudden, and then they walked by me, all of a sudden my heart just leaped for joy. I was so happy I couldn't stand it. And I thought, man, I wish I could make people that happy just by smiling at them like she did with me. I felt honest, Gary, all the way to the parking lot. I felt like my feet were barely touching the ground. I was so happy. I was just filled with joy. And, of course, I had to write to Benjamin Creme about that. And it turns out the young lady was Maitreya. And all she did was look at me and smile. But, I was filled with this tremendous joy. And so that's another way that you could know that you've seen a master is that your experience of them leaves you full of love or full of joy and happiness. And then there's one more, and that is that you talk to them. Sometimes you get in a brief, very brief conversation, or it can be a longer conversation, and they will give you a tip-off by something they say, or maybe they'll reveal that they know something very personal about you that there's no way this stranger could know that about you. And I was I was doing a booth for Share International, and this young African-American man, probably 30 years old, came up and started talking to me about the devastation of our environment and our planet. And I thought, oh boy, I've got somebody who's really kind of a wild man about this. And he was saying it's now or never. It's all over. If we don't turn this around right now, this planet is going to die, and everything on it's going to die. I'm going, oh boy, I got a fanatic here. And I said, no, we can do something about it. It's not over. We can fix things. We can get to work and change it. And he said, well, you can, but I can't because I'm the observer. And then we continued talking, but that immediately rang a bell in my brain. You're the observer? Whoa, wait a minute, who am I talking to? Well, we ended the conversation, and he walked, a very nice young man, walked away, and I wrote to Benjamin Creme, and the young man was Maitreya. So, and other people have written in and said they knew things about him. They were talking, and they said, well, isn't your birthday so-and-so, or didn't your grandmother do, so? And they're going, how could this person possibly know that? It was a master, that's how. So usually when I tell these, when I give like a public talk or something and I share the ways that you could know you've seen a master, Gary, there's a line of people after I'm done talking who want to talk to me and share an experience with me. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if any of your listeners and viewers have had a similar experience. And it was a master. I mean, they make themselves available to us. Sometimes one person wrote in and said, this guy was smoking like crazy. I hate smokers. It was a master. And what's the lesson there? We're all sacred. No matter what our habits are, no matter what we look like, we're all holy. We're all sacred. We're all living souls,
Well, that's funny because I saw Maitreya one time years ago, and if you talk to anybody in my family, they will tell you that I cannot stand BMW drivers. I think they're the most aggressive drivers on the road. And guess who was standing right next to a BMW for this one? It was Maitreya.
No way.
So, absolutely. So, I mean, yes, they, as Ben said, they can read each one of us like a book. It's like they open it up and, there it is.
Well, they know us because they were us. All of these masters went through human evolution. They were human beings like us until they learned all the lessons that planet Earth can teach them. So they've had all of our experiences. They've been killed. They've killed people. They've lied to people. They've been lied to. They've been abandoned. They've abandoned people. They've learned all the lessons. They've been miserable. They've been suffering. They've been sick. They know us because they were us. That's why, Gary, they never judge us. They never judge us. All they do is love us. I mean, and when I learned that, it just brought me so much relief. The masters don't judge us because they know exactly what's going on. They know what we're going through. They know how challenging and how difficult life is. They know we can't always make the right choice or the best choice as we use our free will in the world. They know that. So they don't judge us at all. They just love us and try to teach us and help us. Isn't that wonderful?
That's amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, they're so loving and so kind and so free of judgment, and they also have a wonderful sense of humor. Because that look that the Master Jesus gave me on that park bench, when he looked up through the top of his eyes at me, I thought it was Maitreya, because there's a picture taken of Maitreya when he appeared out of thin air in Nairobi to 6,000 people. And the editor of the Kenyan Times was there and took pictures of him. And one of those pictures has him looking like that at the people in the crowd with his head down looking up through the top of his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, that must be Maitreya. Well, I wasn't. It was Jesus. They just have a sometimes very subtle sense of humor, but sometimes a very, a wonderful sense of humor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You talked about the joy. You exude a lot of joy too, by the way. I thought I'd share that with you.
Oh, good.
I love to say this to people, because it's the truth of it is, there. But in the one of the articles that Ben's master wrote, The Joy of Living, he said, fear and joy are equally infectious. And he also talked about joy is the hallmark of these masters, and
yes.
that's what we should be emulating is their joy, and you talked about how it filled you up with joy the times that you saw these masters, yes. and how other people explained the same way and stuff. The one thing, I've noticed that for myself. Now, one thing I did want to add in there too, and I was thinking about this when you talked about you can't get it out of your mind. And I never really talked about this actually on the channel, or dream experiences. People have had the same kind of thing where all the dreams we've had in our lifetime, right? Most of them are just emotional, astral, nonsense, right? And then every once in a while, one of these masters will pop into one of our dreams, and we can't get the dream out of our head, and it has an impact on us in that way. And
yes.
I had a dream with Maitreya. He had a mole under each eye, and so I would focus in on his eyes in the dream, And my mom had a dream that even to this day she talked about when she was going through a divorce with my father. And my brother and I were acting up, and we weren't that supportive because we were like, I was 8, my brother was like 10, so go figure, right? A couple boys just running around, mom wanted us to help with the laundry. I don't have time for that, that kind of thing. So my mom was under a great deal of stress. Well, anyway, she had a dream one night, and this guy with this red hair and these blue eyes, and I always imagined Vincent van Gogh look, the way she described him with the deep blue eyes. Looked at her, grabbed her in the dream, and this was all in her dream, grabbed her hand and said, Linda, I just want to let you know I can't be with you now, but I love you for who you are. And my mom said that actually brought her, there were times where she thought about just giving up, and she thought about that dream, and that dream got her through it. And when I started finding out about this information and I was going to see Ben, I asked her, I said, do you mind if I ask him if that maybe was somebody? And she said, oh, sure. So I asked him, and then not too long after I got back from California, I was talking to my mom. She goes, well, did you ask him? I said, my mom doesn't believe any of it. She believes somewhat this, but she doesn't really follow it or anything like that or really study it. But through the course of years of me talking to her, she's a middle-of-the-road Methodist, so she's able to kind of see other sides to different people's viewpoints. She's not too dogmatic, but so she wanted to know. She was like, what did he say? And I said, he said it was Jesus. It was the Master Jesus in the dream. But I cannot tell you how many times over the course of talking with my mother, she mentioned that dream. And that dream alone, that was the thing that got her through it.
It gave her hope.
It gave her hope.
See, that's what they do. That's what they do. By the way, and your listeners and viewers should know that we're not talking about this stuff so they'll believe it. It's not at all. We're not here to get anybody to believe what we say. It's fine with me if you don't believe a word I say. But it's wonderful that they're listening and thinking about it. And that's really the point. It's not about belief anyway. But yeah, we're not trying to convince anybody that what we say is true, right, Gary?
Absolutely. I mentioned that at the beginning of every video, that it's just being presented for you to look at, for you to consider. I always say this too. It is my hope that hopefully somebody will investigate a little further for themselves and look at it from that standpoint. And then if they see it's true for them, great. If not, what did you lose? You didn't lose anything other than just a little bit of time looking into some websites, because in the description of the videos, I have links to George Adamski, to Alice Bailey, of course, the Share International. I don't know if you've ever heard of CropCircleConnector.net, Dick?
No.
You can go to this website, and they actually have images of formed crop patterns and then they have the GPS location of where they are, if they're accessible to go to or not. I mean, it's a wonderful resource for that. Unfortunately, most of them don't happen in Georgia. They are in England, so I wouldn't be able to go over there anyway. But you know what I'm saying? But yes, it's all for people just to look at and consider, and you know.
I have one more experience I'd like to share, if you don't mind. And then we can probably call it a show. But you talked about joy, and I had an experience. I gave a talk in Los Angeles at a big kind of a convention thing, and the room was crowded. And when I came out, there was a line of people to talk to me. And all of a sudden, this short guy with dark hair, looked to be, I don't know, maybe 45 years old, walked right in front of everybody in line and came right up to me, cut in line. And he said, I really liked your talk. That was really great. And I said, well, thank you. And I said, can I ask your name? And he said, well, sure, but you have to repeat it after me. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, my name is you. And I said, you. And he said, R. And I said, R. And he said, love. And I said, love. You are love. And he said, so are you. And he gave me a great big hug with his huge smile on his face. And then he walked away. And I mean, once again, I was just filled with joy. Well, it turns out it was Maitreya. The little man was Maitreya. And you are love. I just thought, you know, if that doesn't give people hope and joy, nothing will. It was just a wonderful, wonderful message from a wonderful guy. And, you know, joy is happiness, but joy is more than happiness. Joy, you were talking about earlier, and I just wanted to say, joy is a soul quality. It's a quality of our soul. It's deeper than that surface feeling of being happy. It's really not a feeling. It's a state of being. You know, it's like love is a state of being. I'm not talking about the romantic, sweaty palms love. I'm talking about brotherly love, that deep love. That's a soul quality. Well, joy, it's a state of being. Joy is the same way. And the masters, when they express joy, I mean, it comes from their being, from their soul, from their spiritual, the spiritual being they are. And that's where our joy can come from, is from our heart and from that spiritual being that we are. So it's more than just being happy about something. It's much deeper than that. And everybody that's listening has had that experience. I know they have. They've experienced that deep joy, and that's what it is. It's a soul quality. It's a wonderful quality that we all have. We just don't let it shine sometimes, you know, and we can do that. So Maitreya really let it shine on me that day.
You are loved. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, you are loved. So are you. Big smile from ear to ear, and a tight, heavy hug, you know. And then here's the thing, Gary. The thing that made me suspicious, besides that wonderful feeling of joy, he walked down the hall, because I always talk to people out in the hall, not in the center, because they're going to start some other event. And I watched him walk down the hall to, there's a big water station where they have a big cooler full of water and then a bunch of glasses. And he was drinking water. And I thought, the water carrier. Because Maitreya is the water carrier. He's the teacher for the age of Aquarius. And, of course, the symbol for Aquarius is a man carrying a pot of water, the water carrier. And when he went down to the water station, I said, okay, that does it. That's got to be Maitreya. And then I wrote to Benjamin Creme, and he confirmed it. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see it. Well, Dick, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your joy with everyone and your experiences and the 5 steps to figuring out, if you had an experience with one of these masters. So I'm going to go back and listen to it again, because I learned a lot from what you had to say. And believe it or not, I actually remembered an experience. Like when we got off the phone the last time, I thought about something. I was like, that actually fit a couple of 3 of the steps.
Yeah. And it only needs to be one of them to be a master, you know. And so people should know if they've seen a master. That's a very encouraging thing to happen, because they care that much about us.
Yes,
you know, they just really want us to be happy and healthy. And when they appear, that's a sure sign that they really care. So I just can't thank you enough for having me on, Gary. You do great work. Keep up the great work.
You're very kind.
I just love what you're doing.
Well, hopefully you'll come back and talk about some other aspects of this incredible information and share your enthusiasm and your joy in that regard too. So I would love to have you come back anytime. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dick, and you take care of yourself.
You too.
Remember
Bye-bye.
to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.